Hello and welcome to the 50 Info Show. I'm your host, Lieutenant Vince Lewis of the Phoenix Police Public Affairs Bureau, coming to you once again from Phoenix Police Headquarters in beautiful downtown Phoenix. I want to welcome back to the show my co-host, PIO Sgt. Rob Scherer. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks, boss. Feel like it's been a little while.
I know, right? Here we are. It's fall, back to school season. We're going to have a serious discussion, though, about a few topics that I want to kick out. Some of it's some reviews, some of it's, new, but we both have school-age kids.
Yeah.
We, like every other responsible adult out there, are concerned for not only their safety, but, our safety as well. Because when you throw pedestrians and bicycles and scooters and electric bicycles, everything into the mix with vehicles, when everybody's trying to get to work and trying to get to school and trying to make their deadlines, we have some interesting interactions with traffic out there. So we got to be able to watch our speeds. We have to be able to watch our speeds, especially in the school zones. Yeah. Looking out for kids darting out from traffic, making sure that we're stopping for the school buses and so forth. I mean, can you think of anything else that throw into this mix?
Yeah, I think it's going to be something we're probably going to harp on a lot in this next 15 or so minutes, but it's that communication with your kids. If you have these kids, like I have one going to middle school, she doesn't walk to school yet, but at some point she might. Being aware of, how you're going to get there. Let's walk that path. Let's ride that path if they're riding a scooter or a bike. Let's find those crosswalks. Let's figure out how you're going to get there safely. And then just discuss with your kids the importance of being aware of those surroundings. Don't get buried in your phone. Put your head up. Exactly. Realize there's cars that are going 15 miles an hour. And even at 15 miles an hour, those can do some damage still at that point. And obviously, if your travel includes some of those elements of a school and you're going past one of those schools, just understand around 8 o'clock in the morning, every kid that goes to that school is on their way to that place, and it's going to be congested. If you can work your way around it, if you don't have business in that area, that's fine. If you can't, you're going through, just be aware, cognizant, and patient.
Yeah. So let's get heavy. I want to talk about school threats. Now, it's serious, but you and I probably remember back in the day, hearing stories from our parents that they used to duck and cover and do those drills, and they were worried about Cold War and nuclear threats and things. Nobody really knew what to really exactly place that anxiety. But you and I, maybe it was fire drills, maybe it was other things that were going on, bomb threats that would come in, and somebody would didn't want to take their finals that semester, and they figured they'd try to disrupt the school. We've enacted legislation and we've incorporated training into law enforcement to address those larger scale, potential mass casualty or described mass casualty incidents. But our kids now, as we're hearing, are going through a very specific threat environment that has their anxiety kind of peaked.
Yeah.
And I think where we all kind of admit that social media promulgates that, this environment that they're in right now, it adds an extra layer, not only to have to worry about school and passing grades and the social anxieties, but now they have to worry about, what's going on during a lockdown. What caused the lockdown? Is it real? Is it not? I mean, are you hearing some of these concerns from your kids or your kids' friends?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it is weird because it's not normal nature for us thinking back to our school age or our school days. But yeah, for them, it kind of is. It's that extra layer of anxiety. It's that extra element that we didn't have to think about, but they do. And now we as parents are definitely, that's on our mind just as much as it is as the kids.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I mean, you get the text who are like, hey, my school's gone into lockdown. Do you know? And our kids know that we're cops. They're going to ask us, do you know what's going on? And sometimes it's the first we've heard of it. But of course, we get our heightened anxiety too. We're like, well, I don't know what's going on. How do I get information from the school? How do I get information to my child? And my first inclination might be to rush the school.
Right. Yeah, I think even as cops maybe my first inclination is tell my boss, hey, I'm going to be out of the mix for a little bit. I'm going to figure out what's going on. But I'm going to try to get a hold of those people and do some of those things that we can get information gathering. But yeah, I had one with my oldest, and she's now 21 and off and married and doing her life. But I had one where I worked a few miles away, and one of my inclinations was to get in my car and go there. I mean, we understand that's something that goes through your mind right away.
And that's from a parent's perspective. But what's our perspective as police officers? So we're back in the field. We're sergeants or officers. We hear this call come out at this school, potential lockdown, that kind of a thing. And we know that the kids oftentimes all they're seeing is maybe the whatever signals that they get from the school that, hey, we're going into lockdown. The next thing they know, the lights are out, the windows are closed, and they're hiding in desks, and they're hiding in closets, and they're just sheltering in place. Right. So they have no idea whether it's a drill or whether it's real. They're reaching out for information. And when you get a disconnect or lack of information from parents, we know that we've seen in the past, parents will go to the school thinking that, you're not going to stop me from getting to my kid.
Right.
I understand. While I understand that is actually an extra added threat element that's introduced to the mix for first responders, right?
Yeah. I mean, when we're going to one of those scenes, obviously every officer that's going there, that's a heightened call first right out of the chute. We're going to gather all the information we can, work with the schools. A lot of schools have those kind of texting services that they're going to let the parents know in certain circumstances, and maybe that's one of them. But as one of our protocols going there is we're going to designate kind of a reunification area. If you're more inclined to get there, that's where we're going to ask you to go. It's going to be a place where you're safe. It's going to be a place where we know you're going to be, and we're a place where we can take your kid and bring them to you. We don't need you in there. And the reason that is sometimes we don't know the full suspect description. Sometimes we don't know everything. And if we see just someone with a purpose walking around that school that is not of age to be at that school, that then we're going to think potential threat, and that's not what you are. And it's just something we have to manage as opposed to managing the situation that we're there to take care of.
Yeah, we know that there's, sorry to interrupt, but we know that there was a high profile incident in another community where the response to deal with the threat was very delayed, and a lot of tragedy came out of that. Right. We don't want people to mistake that as the standard response across the board. How is Phoenix different?
Yeah, no, we're heightened. And on a lot of these circumstances, every asset that's available is going, period. We don't take these lightly in any way, shape, or form. If and not to bring up any scenarios or anything like that, but we're going to do what we need to do very safely, very efficiently to make sure anybody and everybody that we can keep safe, that will happen.
Yeah, and we don't want anybody to introduce themselves as a variable that we would have to account for.
Correct. Any extra variable eliminates and extends that time and makes it something that we're taking those assets away and that time away from the point that we're there for.
So we're ready. We have a plan. We communicate not only amongst us, public safety, but police, fire, dispatch, the schools. We're encouraging everybody to not only sign up for their school alerts, but also watch us on social media, because we can give real-time information that way too. So let's dial it back a bit. Let's take it before the lockdown happens. Let's just say somebody comes across a message, a post on social media, and it names a generic high school, East High School. Don't come to school tomorrow, XYZ, and then there's a graphic picture, something alarming in there.
Right.
Are you familiar with how these come about and what the after effects might be if somebody were to make a rash decision with that?
What do you mean?
So what I've learned through my time in Homeland was that oftentimes these posts are built in another community using available graphics online that you could just pick up anywhere.
Right.
And a random school name, maybe it's not something specific as a school that only exists in Phoenix, but like an East High or a Central High or something where there's plenty of them across the board. Somebody, let's just say they make a rash decision, they want to fire that off into a community and see what happens. Well, what we've seen sometimes is every town with a East High School now goes on alert, and that gets reposted, and it kind of ripples outwards. Yeah. So
those turn into nationwide things. We've seen them almost every school year, sometimes multiple, where it ends up being a nationwide thing, and we're almost aware of it kind of sometimes in our community where it isn't relevant to us, but we're aware of it, and then it will spawn off into other schools. It's just that reposting element. It's that pushing it further and further and further and further. It creates a huge problem, again, that can go nationwide.
Yeah, so the Maricopa County Attorney's Office and other Valley agencies have all kind of partnered to echo the same message. We want people to report, don't repost. Because what happens when you do repost that is that you might be trying to do the right thing to say, hey, many people need to know this so we can heighten awareness, but let the messaging come from the school and from law enforcement and from parents, as opposed to just resending that text, because what we've seen digitally is it ripples out and it affects other communities. 2-3 months later, you may have forgotten, but it suddenly appears again. Is this a new threat? Is it the same old threat? It's better to just report it to authorities and not repost it. So that was another campaign that we're looking at.
And really, gather your information from those sources that, I don't want to say can be trusted, but gather them from us. If we have an incident that involves a school, 99 times out of 100, we're putting something out on our social media to let the public know. That's what our Public Affairs Bureau is responsible for in those scenarios. And the school, keep that communication with your school. Those texts will come out. you'll have communication in that sense, and those are trusted sources for that information.
Okay. Last topic I want to hit, and I think we have some familiarity with this as parents of high school kids in this day and age. It is a game. It is a rather risky game, but it is a game that high schoolers play. And let's just say you see a group of high schoolers, you see them at the burger shop, or you see them in the grocery store, you see them walking around with goggles, swim goggles, or swimmies or floaties on their arms. Maybe they're carrying a squirt gun with them, that kind of a thing. This is all part of a game that we are aware of, that most Valley law enforcement is aware of. It's a game that's called Assassin, or sometimes it's called Senior Assassin because it's just restricted to the seniors. But are you familiar with the game? Do you know how it's played?
Yes, yeah. I have a high school age student that partook in that and will most likely partake in it. Yeah, I mean, it's from a law enforcement perspective, we can see it and go, wow, there's elements of that do have a dangerous element to it. We understand that it's a game. We understand the perspective of the people in the game, being that we've had kids that play it. But
how is the game played? What are we worried about?
So you're using squirt guns to shoot another team, if you will, or another player to get them out.
To play tag.
To play tag, essentially, with water guns. The operative word guns in that. And unfortunately, some of these squirt guns, if you will, that these kids have resemble guns that you and I carry on a daily basis. So that's where that dangerous factor comes in. That's where people that may not know in a neighborhood, you may be hanging out by your buddy's house waiting for him to come out to shoot him, but his neighbor doesn't understand what this game is, never heard of it, doesn't know what it is, and sees you hanging out with a gun, and they may not recognize it as a squirt gun. It may not look like a squirt gun, but those are some of those dangerous things that happen where we're then called in thinking somebody has a gun and they're looking at their neighbor's house.
Right.
We're going to respond much differently than someone's playing a game with squirt guns.
And these are kids and they're playing tag, so they could run.
Yeah.
They could run through a neighborhood. They could climb into other people's yards. They could be waiting on top of roofs. They could be driving fast through neighborhoods to get away. Right. All kinds of problems that could be generated from this. So that it's important to have that talk with your teen ahead of this to be able to say that you understand that the game to you might just be a game. And I get it, everybody's playing. And I hear that sometimes there's a jackpot involved in this, a cash jackpot that can get very, very competitive.
Yes.
So that's going to drive some of this risky behavior, but to have that conversation ahead of time with your teen to say that it's your behavior that's going to get noticed, right?
Yeah, and if you encounter law enforcement in the midst of this game, understand that some of your behavior might seem suspicious to someone else. Just listen to us. Obey commands. Understand why we're there. We're there thinking someone's there with a gun. We're going to approach it that way, which might be a little more elevated than what someone would expect playing a game of tag with squirt guns.
Yeah, so just to recap, we talked a little bit about Senior Assassin. We want to make sure that parents stay in communication with not only law enforcement, but with their schools primarily, so they can get that special information if there's any kind of reunification after school threats. Report these threats, don't repost them. Watch out for your speed in school zones. Anything else you want to throw out there?
No, just communicate. That's what these messages all are. Parents, communicate with your kids. Give them what their expectations are, and let's keep everybody safe.
Perfect. We're going to have a great school year this year. I want to thank my co-host, Rob Scherer, for joining me. I want to thank you, the listener. Thank you, the crew, for producing this. Remember, everybody, you too can help fight crime in your community by sending tips to Silent Witness and potentially earn a cash reward. Visit silentwitness.org or call 480-WITNESS. We're on all social media platforms. Like us, love us, subscribe. We're hiring. Go to joinphxpd.com. And remember, we're all in this together.